We're live. Hello. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the second Mondays with Maja. We are talking about the imposter syndrome today. Thank you so much. Ooh, hi, Jennifer. Thank you for joining in. Thank you so much to everybody who watched last week's episode. And even though you may not have watched it live, you watched it on YouTube. So all of our Mondays with Maja, if you don't get a chance to watch it live, Shara puts everything up on YouTube. I'm not sure if it goes up within 24 hours, but it'll be up, I think, within a day or two. It'll be on YouTube. So thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for answering some of the questions that we posted about what are you interested in learning about the imposter syndrome. And also thank you to everybody who watched my very first TED Talk. You can watch that on YouTube right now if you just put in the title of the talk, which is How Apologies Kill Our Confidence. You can find my TED Talk. And what is the point of Mondays with Maja? The point of Mondays with Maja, which is also the point of the business in general and what I do, is really to give you the tools so that you can take action. So that you can take action in your life, your career, your relationship, whatever that action means for you. Basically, I hope that I'm giving you the tools and the strategies to push you out of your comfort zone and to get you comfortable with being uncomfortable. So today we're talking about the imposter syndrome, and I wore this sequins football jersey, I don't know if you can see it, for my husband, who hates it. Steve hates this jersey, and I love it. How can you hate a sequenced football jersey? So I wore this just for him. Yes. Let me tell you something funny. I was at the mall the other day, and there was this redhead at the mall. She had brighter red hair than I did, if you can believe it. And we both just sort of came together, and we were just talking about our hair, and she said, "Feel my hair, it's so soft." And I was like, "Okay." And my hands are in her hair, and she's a total stranger. And we said goodbye, and I walk back over to Steve and Ryo, and Ryo's like, "Do you know that woman?" And I said, "No." And she said, "But you were touching her hair." And I said, "I know, but she had red hair and I have red hair, and there's just a connection, and redheads know. So wherever there's a redhead, we tend to meet." And Ryo thought it was the most bizarre thing that I was talking to a fellow redhead who was a stranger, and we had our hands in our hair. Hello, nice to see you. Hello, thank you for joining. Thank you, everybody. Okay. So thank you for sending in your questions. Let's get started. I think it'll be a shorter episode today because there's so much to do. I'm going to pack imposter syndrome into a few different segments. So let's get started, and I'm going to fill this with lots of personal stories to show you how I also deal with the imposter syndrome all the time, and I have fears and doubts all the time. Okay, so what is the imposter syndrome? The imposter syndrome is when you feel, if you hear that squeaking sound, that's my friggin' dog Cooper, who had access to his toys all day long, but has chosen right now to sit here and squeak it. So thank you to Cooper for that. Hi everybody who's joining in. Okay, so the imposter syndrome, really in a nutshell, is an inability to internalize your success. It's an inability to internalize your success. And you feel like wherever you go, you know this much, and everybody else knows this much. Everybody else is an expert, but you. Everybody else is smart, but you. Everybody else knows where they're going, but you. You're the one with the doubt and the fear. That's what the imposter syndrome is. It's this belief that you have somehow fooled everybody. And once they figure out, they're going to come and swoop you out of grad school, med school, law school, your new promotion at work, and they're going to say, "Oh, no, we found out about you. You don't belong here. You're not good enough. You're not smart enough. You're not brave enough." The imposter syndrome is also about feeling like when you actually do succeed, you don't feel happy. It's just this sense of relief that it's over, but then anxiety about, oh my gosh, how am I going to recreate this? How am I going to recreate this? So, what are some characteristics? How do you know if you have the imposter syndrome, for instance? So, one of the main characteristics is the need to be the best at every single thing you do. So the goal is perfection. Perfectionism is the pursuit of flawlessness. And that will set you up for failure each and every time. But you have this internalized sense that you need to be perfect at every single thing you do. And then when you fail, as we all fail, it's inevitable, you then internalize that failure. You then feel like a failure. And that feeling of being a failure is the second characteristic, because you fear failure. And so when we sort of have the imposter syndrome and we deal with issues of perfectionism, one of the things that we do is we avoid situations where failure is an option. Optimalists, people who are more realistic, have a more realistic view of the world. Optimalists, it's not that they love failure. Is it due to being raised a certain way during childhood? That's a good question. So I'm going to get into that later, but it's a whole host of reasons. Yeah, it can be bred from your childhood. It can be bred from having a difficult experience in school. Like there's a plethora of reasons why you could feel like an imposter. Actually, I can get into that now. So it's basically the feelings that perpetuate self-doubt are around us continuously and everywhere all the time. So it happens also when we enter a new role, a new environment. So let's say you're entering school for the first time. You have this new role as a student. You're entering motherhood. You're entering a relationship. You just got promoted at work. You entered a new job or a new role at work. You're working with a new group of people. All of those situations can foster self-doubt. You can also work at a job or in an environment that breeds self-doubt. I gave a talk to a group of lawyers and marketers, and who else was there? There was a bunch of different people, and one of them came up to me and he said, this business is toxic. This business will make you doubt yourself at every step of the process. And that was exactly what the research shows, that the environment that you work in can breed self-doubt. If you're the only woman in your position or the only woman of color, that can breed doubt, because then you feel like you now need to be accountable or you are now a representative of your entire group, whether that's your gender or your race. So that can breed self-doubt. Sexism is part of it. I was actually going to save all that for part 2, but there are a lot of different reasons why the imposter syndrome comes out. So let's go back to the main characteristics. So the first characteristic that I said was this need to be the best at everything you do. And then the second characteristic was this fear of failure. So that when you do fail, and it's inevitable, as we all will fail at some point in our lives, when you do fail, instead of recognizing that failure is just information, you internalize that failure. You've heard me say it 100 times before probably, but oftentimes when we make a mistake, we think we are the mistake. When we fail at something, we think we are the failure. And that's another characteristic of the imposter syndrome. Instead of pumping ourselves up we second guess ourselves constantly, doubting ourselves, planting seeds of doubt, really where there was no doubt to begin with, but we foster that. And then the third characteristic, or the third main one really, is that you don't own your accomplishments. You don't own your successes. No matter how minor, you just don't own them. Instead of owning that space and saying, yes, I did that. That was me. That was me. You say, oh, anybody could have done this. If I did this, oh my gosh, this is a joke. If I did this, anybody could have done that. We deny our own competence. We deny our own competence. And then when we get praised, we dismiss it and we minimize it because we think we are undeserving of praise. Because we think we are undeserving of praise. Isn't that awful? When I talk about the imposter syndrome, all I see in the audience when I'm talking is this. Just a whole lot of heads nodding. Women saying, yep, that's me. Even pointing to themselves. I just gave a talk last weekend about this, and 2 of the women in the audience started crying. And then I started tearing up, and it's so emotional. These feelings of the imposter syndrome are so guttural. They're so visceral. We can remember those moments when we felt less than. And even though some of those moments may have happened a decade ago, for many of us, it feels as if it just happened yesterday. You can describe that emotion. You can describe that moment when you felt less than as if it happened yesterday. It's also not just something that women struggle with. It's something that all of us struggle with, really. The original researchers of the imposter syndrome actually wish that they had not called it the imposter syndrome, that they had called it the imposter experience, because that's how wide-ranging it is. Some of the research shows that at any given point, 70% of us will experience the feelings of being an imposter at some point in our lives. I remember the very first graduate course I took in the PhD. And damn thing from Cooper here, he's squeaking. And so I entered the classroom, and I can't remember what class it was. And I was sitting there just nervous, feeling like, oh my gosh, I can't believe it. I got into the PhD. Oh my gosh, looking around going, they look smarter than me. They know more than me. They've probably read more than me. And into the classroom came a guy, and he sat down, and he said to the professor, oh, hey, Dorothy. Excuse me? Dorothy? No. How are you on a first name basis with her? And immediately there was this power differential that I saw. And immediately I felt like this. Because I saw that he saw himself as an equal. He called her by her first name, and I was like, oh, no, she's Professor Smith, let's say. And I thought, how dare he? It's so disrespectful. But in his mind, he deserved to be there. And the only difference was that this prof had 1 extra degree than he did. That's all. And so he was like, hey, what's up? Hey, Dorothy. And I was like, oh my gosh, how could he be so disrespectful? But in reality, he didn't have a lot of imposter syndrome, but I did. And I remember sitting there in that classroom, and somebody mentioned an article that I hadn't read, or a theorist that I'd never heard of. And I was like, oh, it's over. It is over. I don't even know this theory. I don't even know that book. I haven't even read that article. Who am I? How did I get into this program? Oh my gosh, they're going to realize I'm not smart enough, or I'm not good enough. And that takes a long time to deal with. And even to this day, I still have those feelings of, Oh, I should have known that. Oh, that was stupid. Oh, why didn't I learn that? And then I have to remind myself, holy shit, Maya, I'm a lifelong learner. It's okay. I didn't know that. I'm learning it now. I'm doing the best that I can. That's really what it comes down to it, right? I'm doing the best that I can. I gave a talk for International Women in Science. And I'm literally sitting in between on a panel with like a scientist that's studying the influenza strain. She's literally saving lives, studying the flu vaccine and how she can save lives. And I'm beside her going, ooh, I'm going to talk about apologies and imposter syndrome. And then I have another scientist beside me, some brain surgeon. And I was like, oh my gosh, what am I doing here? What am I doing here? And then I start talking to the audience about my failures and how long it took me to get my undergraduate degree. And you could feel the whole room just kind of like, okay, I think I just made it a little more real or a little more relatable. And that's something that we need to do with the imposter syndrome, is because we have such a fear of failure, we need to talk about failure more often. We need to destigmatize failure. We really do. We need to unravel it and recognize truth. Why do I feel so stupid for even asking questions? Oh my gosh, that's all of us. That is literally all of us. All of my students, I see them in class. I can see stuff is working. They want to answer a question. They don't. I'm looking at them like, where's your hand up? And they're like, no, oh no, I was fixing my hair. And then somebody else answers the question and I can see it on their face that they were going to give that same answer, but they don't. They keep it to themselves. How often have we been at work in a meeting and we sort of want to give an idea, but then we're like, ooh, oh my gosh, it's probably not a smart enough idea. Somebody else probably had that idea at another meeting. They're going to laugh at my idea. And then Joe Blow gives his idea and everyone in the meeting's like, yep, give it up for Joe. That was amazing. And you were like, shit, what? That was me. I could have said that. Oh my gosh, what is happening? Yes, that's the imposter syndrome. If you see me looking down, it's because I have like 50 pages of notes to get through, and I don't want to forget about anything. Okay, so it's not that the imposter syndrome is like this pathological disease or anything, but it is an experience. And what we know is that the higher or the more we feel like an imposter, the higher the rates of anxiety and feelings of depression and stress. And that goes through the roof, right? The problem with the imposter syndrome is that it creates chronic self-doubt. Chronic self-doubt. And when we live in that vortex of self-doubt, we are just filling our heads with excuses and reasons why we shouldn't do something, why we're not the best candidate for this thing. And then you know what happens? Then we start deflating our goals. We start lowering our goals. We start lowering our expectations, lowering our standards, lowering our dreams and our visions because the possibility for failure exists. And that's what the imposter syndrome does. When you internalize it, when you are having that on replay, all of your mistakes, you are creating the momentum for chronic self-doubt. Chronic self-doubt is this vicious cycle. You doubt yourself, you continuously plant seeds of doubt, you continuously remind yourself of every last possible mistake that you made, even if that mistake was a year ago, 5 years ago. You just keep doing that over and over again, and then you know what the consequence of that is? This. We hold ourselves back. We shrink. We go inward. We avoid. We procrastinate. We don't take risks. And that hurts. That hurts our networking. That hurts our opportunities. That hurts new relationships, new risks, new careers, new trajectories that could have happened in your life or your career, all of that. When you don't take risks, you end up staying in your comfort zone. You end up staying in your comfort zone. So I'll give you an example. Somebody called me out a few months ago on Twitter and said basically that, the stuff that I do is shit, and that I speak for only a certain brand of feminists, that I'm really just for white women or white middle class women, and my message can't resonate with anybody else because I don't talk about anything other than what white women deal with. And so initially my ego was like, oh my gosh, that really hurt. And then I had to remove my ego. And then the next phase of that was self-doubt. Like, oh my gosh, am I not helping women? Am I not doing a good job? Is this not what I should be doing in my life? Am I doing harm? What's happening? And then all that self-doubt started creeping in, and I sort of became paralyzed for like a month. I didn't know how to deal with it. And then you know what the answer was? The answer was just more self-education. I had to learn. I had to read. So we're going to talk about that in future episodes when I talk about like microaggressions and intersectionality and how we can be women helping women for all women. Because obviously as my experience, I can't speak to what all women are going through, but I can definitely learn, and I can definitely read up, and I can definitely talk to other women. And so I took that moment of doubt and I said, okay, what am I going to do with it? I made a mistake, maybe. I'm editing my stuff. I'm learning my stuff. So what can I do about that? I can just move on, right? I can learn, I can grow, and I can keep moving forward, right? That's it. Okay, so the imposter syndrome is about the negative stuff going on in our mind, but it's also about the negative communication styles. How many of us have been in a meeting? Not true at all. As a woman of color, I connect with so many of your topics. Oh, thank you. But I also, I think this is Nicole, right? I also don't want to I don't want to dismiss her, the woman that called me out on Twitter, because I think she legitimately had a point of view that, and honestly, because of her comment, I went and I read up, and I read 3 amazing books on racism and what women of color are going through, and intersectionality. And now my head is filled with how I can make my work better. But thank you for your kind words anyways, Nicole. Okay, so it's also about how we communicate in a negative way that then plants seeds of doubt in other people that make us doubt ourselves. Okay, so let's say you're at a meeting and you want to give an idea. Instead of just giving your idea, what often happens when we have these feelings of imposter syndrome is you like to put a disclaimer in front of your idea. So a disclaimer sounds like, I just have a little idea. I'm not an expert in this, or this is totally like silly. This is a stupid idea, but could we just, and so you're basically telling people, I know this is a silly idea, but I'm just going to say it. And then people are looking at you going, if it's stupid, why is she telling us? Why are we still listening to something that's stupid? What? Why did you do that? All of us have been at meetings where we have heard shit come out of our male colleagues' mouths. And people around that office are like, yes, brilliant idea. And you're like, that's not friggin' brilliant. That's bullshit. My idea was better. But how did you present your idea? You basically led with self-doubt. You led with the negative. Instead of just giving your idea, instead of just giving your opinion, you prefaced it with, I'm not an expert. This is just a little idea. I just have an idea. If I could maybe come in here, if I could just interrupt all these little minimizing words that we use that basically disqualify our ideas. And we do that. I didn't know this, but I do that. I need to stop. Oh my gosh, it's all of us. It's all of us. Go to any meeting, any classroom, any conference, anytime anybody wants to give their opinion in public, immediately we get this wave of self-doubt, like, oh my gosh, is this stupid? This is stupid. They're going to totally think it's stupid. I should just tell them it's stupid beforehand so that they know that I know it's stupid. Do you see how it's like, what? Or, yeah, with all due respect is my lead. With all due respect, how about you respect me? This is my idea. Here's my idea. That's what you do, right? Oh my gosh. Yes, yes. I've heard, I'm not an expert in this. It's okay. You don't have to be an expert. You don't need 3 degrees in something to give your opinion. You can just give it. It sounds so much better if you just say, why don't we try this? I have a great idea. I've been thinking about this. Let's do this. Instead of, could I just kind of interrupt? Sorry, I know maybe some of you have already heard this. I know this may sound silly. It doesn't frame us in the best light, right? So we want to really strengthen the link between, what did I want to say? Oh yeah. And the other way we disqualify and minimize ourselves is in how we take compliments, especially compliments at work. Oh my gosh, I have so much to say about this. This is the imposter syndrome. When you get complimented on anything, from your hair, your sequins football jersey, a job well done at work, anything, the only thing you should say is thank you. Thank you. And then you, oh my gosh, resist the urge to minimize your accomplishments. Resist the urge to push away the praise. Own your comment. Even, doesn't matter how minor. You baked banana muffins. Somebody complimented you on your banana nut muffins. Thank you. Thank you for enjoying my banana nut muffins. But you know what we say? Oh my gosh, it was a new recipe. Are you sure? It's, they feel like they're not done yet. I should have baked them another 20 minutes. I didn't have the right recipes. I didn't have the right chocolate chips. I didn't have the right, just thank you. Thank you, next. Yes, thank you, next, right? Maybe that's just the first step. And if you're ready, the second step, when somebody praises you or compliments you on anything, you can say, thank you. And then, I really appreciate the compliment because I worked hard for this, because I really earned this. Thank you. I appreciate that. Somebody complimented me, one of my students complimented me on a lecture. They're like, Prof, that was such a great lecture. And I was like, I know. And they started laughing. And I was like, no, laugh. Yeah, sure, laugh. But I worked so hard on that lecture. And I'm glad you noticed. Thank you. Right? That's what we want to do. I want to strengthen that link between our effort and the accomplishment, right? They go together. So stop undervaluing yourself. Stop undervaluing yourself. So there's a real difference between how men and women taking notes. Oh my gosh, that's so me. I take notes everywhere. But there's a real difference between how men and women handle their success. Men own their success. On any given, I don't know if I mentioned this last time, but on any given self-evaluation at work, you know when you have to evaluate yourself for, what are they called? Like, I guess like yearly evaluations or whatnot. And you have to rate yourself. Most of those scales are between 1 and 5. With 1 being, not very good and 5 being very, very good. Research shows that women tend to rate themselves more often in the number 3. 3 out of 5. Why? Annual performance review. Yes, that's it. Annual performance review. because they don't want to seem too cocky. They want to show that there's room for growth. And where do men tend to rate themselves more often than not? They are the ones that are rating themselves a 4 and a 5 out of 5. A 5 out of 5, because their mindset is, I'm an expert in that. I'm an expert. That's the difference, right? We are constantly undervaluing our skill sets, our knowledge and what we know, and men tend to over-evaluate, over-inflate to the tune of about 30%. That's what we call overconfidence, where men rate their skills as about 30% better than it actually is. When you ask a undergraduate student, how do you think you did on the test? Research shows that women will say, I probably failed it, and like earnestly, genuinely believe that they failed. And men tend to say, yeah, I aced that. Like, I fully aced that. And then the grades come back, and the men didn't ace it, but the women, more likely than not, scored a B+ or higher. But they felt, can you, my chocolate chip cookie, 30%, that's funny. But the women felt that they had failed, and yet they come out with an A. Like, we are constantly doubting ourselves. When we get complimented at work, another really, really common thing that we do is we say, oh, it wasn't me, it was the team. It was the team. Oh, it was everybody behind me. I couldn't possibly, oh my gosh, I couldn't possibly do anything on my own. Oh my gosh, it was my assistant and it was my husband. He's so helpful. And it was my daughter. It's not my dog, Cooper, but it's the Starbucks baristas, my nail tech. It was my 18-member team. It was literally everybody. Like literally everybody. Okay, so there's a new promotion at work for one person. So who are we hiring? Because you just said you needed all 18 people behind you to lift you up. Like, holy fuck. Somebody compliments you for a job well done at work. Thank you. I'm not saying be an asshole and dismiss the work of your team. No. But can you, like, just once just say thank you and own it? Just be in that space and own it? Yes. And this is what we need to do more of. We don't own it because we have on constant replay that I've mentioned before, the shitty committee, right? The shitty committee. Have we been speaking for 30 minutes already? Oh my gosh. We're like a page into my notes. Okay. This is the shitty committee. Can you see this? This is the shitty committee. Everybody's shitty committee is filled. These are marshmallows. But everybody's shitty committee is filled up to the brim with doubts and fears constantly. We fill this jar up constantly. And then we remind ourselves of this shit all the time. And this jar, the I am awesome jar, your resume of awesomeness, how often does this get filled up, right? This is empty for most of us. This is empty. Because we don't remind ourselves of our greatness. We don't remind ourselves of our progress. We don't remind ourselves of our accomplishments. We don't. All we do is we think back to that mistake, that failure, that embarrassment, that fuck up, whatever it was, instead of reminding ourselves of our awesomeness. So in the university, how can you separate being cocky, arrogant, and humble when taking a compliment? That is something that only women ask because we fear sounding cocky, coming off as arrogant, because so often when you think about confidence, what does confidence look like? What does confidence sound like? The image generally is a white male. And when you present as confident as a woman or as a woman of color. All these stereotypes come into play. And people start thinking, whoa, where is she? Who is she? To go with all that confidence. And sadly, research shows that women are harder on other women. Women are harder on other women. We need to do a whole segment on how we can have more women supporting women. But when you have two resumes and they're identical and just the names are different, Howard and Heidi, you guys may have heard of that study, the Howard and Heidi study with to see gender differences in who gets hired. The male candidate with the exact same qualifications gets hired over the female candidate. And women employers are more likely to hire the guy candidate with the exact same credentials. That hurts. That hurts. And we've more often than not, when I give these talks, women come up to me and they say, you know what? My male bosses have been way better for my career than my female bosses. That the female environment is so competitive and I don't feel like I can trust my female colleagues. They don't pump me up. They're jealous or they're envious. That's so much to unpack. We're going to have to talk about that another time because that is so true unfortunately, for a lot of women. They look at another woman's success as a threat. Instead of applauding and saying, you go get yours, you go get your success, there is enough. There is enough for all of us. Do you know how many people do what I do? So many people do something very similar to what I do. It's all good. There is enough for all of us. There is enough for all of us. We can all be successful, right? And that success really depends on having mentors. We know, again, research shows the value for women in having mentors to move us on up. I talk about this in my workshops, but every woman needs 3 women in her life. She needs a peer, somebody that's really safe for you to talk about the most scariest things and to talk about your failures, somebody who's on the same path and you can just go over ideas together. And then you need somebody who's above you, who's more successful than you, who can open key networking doors for you, who can introduce you to key people. Somebody who believes in you, who's going to open the door and say, you're coming with me. And then we have to look behind. It absolutely is squad goals, right? And then we have to look behind and we have to pick up another woman who doesn't yet believe in herself, who is plagued with doubt, who is plagued with fear. And we have to say, I was you. And now I want to help you like somebody helped me. Okay, so what else? What else do I want to talk about? Okay, so some tips, because we're already like 40 minutes into this. So some tips for how do you push through the imposter syndrome? Okay, so one is to be aware. Oh, hi, Irenia. I just did a Facebook Live with Irenia Russell yesterday, I think. Okay, so how do you break through the imposter syndrome? Some tips. Number 1 is you have to be aware of negative self-talk. You have to be aware of when it's rattling, that noise is rattling in your mind and saying, nope, that's not the truth. That's not the truth. That's just an automatic negative thought. I want you to be cognizant. As often as I want you to be aware of needless, useless, stupid apologies, be aware of how often you are using negative words to describe you or your success. I ask my students, if you get an answer incorrect in class, what are the very first thoughts in your mind? And you know what they say? I'm stupid. That was a stupid thing to say. That was embarrassing. They're laughing at me. And I'm never going to raise my hand again. And so we have to be aware of when that negative lingo is percolating in our mind, and stop it and redirect, and immediately come up with 2 things that you are proud of, 2 things that show your progress, 2 accomplishments. Or why did I raise my hand, for sure. That's what you have to do. You have to remind yourself constantly that you're awesome. Remind yourself constantly that you're awesome. I want to tell you about that study in Montana. So some university professors sent out an email university-wide to all the women faculty. They were putting together a magazine only for women faculty to highlight all the accomplishments of women. And they sent out an email and they said, send us in everything that you are proud of, that you are working on, that makes you, feel alive. And you know how many emails they got? None. They got 0 emails, 0, from women discussing their own accomplishments. What they got, they were inundated with emails of women highlighting the accomplishments of other women. These women could not for the life of them send an email to say, I did this, I am awesome. They felt more comfortable highlighting their friends' attributes, accomplishments, characteristics. And I want us to get more comfortable recognizing our own greatness, recognizing what makes us awesome. Also, be aware of how often you're using self-deprecating humor when somebody compliments you. I have a friend who does that, and we laugh about it. And I want to shake her when she does it and scream, stop this. You are worthy. You are worthy. And then I want to cry, because that self-deprecating humor comes from a deep, deep part of you that does not believe you are worthy of success, that doesn't believe you are worthy of a good life, worthy of a good relationship, worthy of good finances, worthy of a good career. We'll have to unpack that with the next segment when we get into why the imposter syndrome, or how it comes to be. Where does it start from? Okay, and then the second tip is recognizing that failure is not permanent. Failure is not permanent. Failure is a learning opportunity. Failure is just information. That's all it is. And one of the ways I like to do that is I like to talk often about my failures to other people, to colleagues. When I give a talk, I usually like to start off by talking about my failures, because it just kind of breaks down the barriers and it makes us feel like, oh shit, we're in this together. Okay, she messed up. In fact, I talk about so many of my failures that I can see people's faces like, shit, that's a lot of failures. When did she succeed in life? Because I have a lot of failures. The third is we need to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. Get comfortable with being uncomfortable. And that feeling, remember this, that feeling of being uncomfortable, don't confuse that feeling of being uncomfortable with feelings of you not being worthy. That's just you being uncomfortable. That's not that you're not intelligent enough, that you're not smart enough, that you're not brave enough, that you can't do something. So those feelings, that's just you pushing yourself out of your comfort zone. So get used to that feeling, because that's where we want you to be. And then one of the last tips is a gratitude journal. The research is so robust around gratitude, And so I actually got a gratitude journal for my 6-year-old and one for myself. And every night it takes 2 minutes. I just write down, what am I thankful for today? And what did I learn today? And that was it. And then I move on to the next one. Okay, so I see that we are at 45 minutes, so I don't want to talk too long. So I guess we will finish up for tonight. We have...
Subscribe to the YouTube channel.
Oh, what are you saying?
If you want to rewatch.
Oh, yes. If you want to rewatch this, Shara will post this up on YouTube. I think you can subscribe to my YouTube channel. And please, if you haven't already, watch my TED Talk. It is called How Apologies Kill Our Confidence. I think it has 1,300 views. Woo! And what else? I think that's about it. We have so many topics to discuss. Mondays with Maya, I'm looking forward to it. If you have a specific topic that you want me to go over, please send it in. We're definitely